Okay, find a good stopping point. Okay, so today at the beginning of the class, we're going to finish up some things about propaganda, and that's going to lead us into talking about how to trust certain sources and when to be skeptical of certain sources, whether that's because it's propaganda or whether that's because they're trying to sell you something or for a variety of reasons. So when you were doing your research on propaganda, you probably found some pretty disturbing stuff. Before we kind of talk about what that stuff looks like, let's talk a little bit about what propaganda actually is, because it's misleading information. It's information that is biased, and it's from a particular point of view, and that point of view is political. With propaganda, it's got to be a political point of view, right? But not everything with a biased point of view is propaganda. Like, you could post a political meme on Instagram and it represents your point of view, but that doesn't make it propaganda, right? The way that it's propaganda is if it comes from the top down and it's an organized effort. So propaganda is when it is a systemic effort on the part of governments or people in charge, people in power, to manipulate other people's beliefs and attitudes. And it's got to be something that's done through symbols. So it's done through words or gestures or banners or monuments. It's usually a combination of all of these things, postage stamp, coins, whatever, combination of all of these things that somebody, from the top, or a group of people on the top, will like disseminate, like pass out to the people that are lower down, to kind of change their point of view on something, right? So this could be like, this doesn't have to be governments. Propaganda, like, it could be all your teachers get together and we all decide to create a whole bunch of different like posters and stories and music and all this stuff, and it's to get you to, I don't know, love homework. We just want you to love doing homework so much. So we all get together and we create this effort, and it's on purpose and it's systematic, and we start feeding you these little things to get you to try to love homework. That would be an example of propaganda. So it's got to be like deliberate. It can't be on accident, and it's got to be deliberate manipulation. So let me turn off the lights so you can see some of this. So you guys did some research then on what Nazi propaganda looked like. They had an entire ministry of propaganda, right? Who did research on that ministry of propaganda? What did you find out about it, Zach?
It was the ministry of spread propaganda, and they control like every form of media spreading out there.
Yeah, good. So like during this time period, like they didn't allow American movies to be shown in Germany. It was all movies that had been approved by this Nazi propaganda machine, right? All theater, all music, everything had to get their stamp of approval before they would show it. And then they produced a lot of stuff too, right? Yeah. Maggie?
They kind of like targeted different parts of the community, so like they target like people who were working, like the propaganda, they would look at them and try to like spread it towards them, so then it spreads with other people, and then they target like mother and children.
Oh, interesting.
Because like new generation kind of feeling, so like they want them to be like, oh, this is different, and so then it kind of like from there.
Yeah, I got it. So it's like one style of propaganda isn't going to work for everyone. This goes back to what we were talking about with rhetorical analysis, right? You've got to know your audience really well. So they target, like you say, these little subsets of the community. They targeted children with the Hitler Youth. They targeted mothers and children. I thought that's really interesting. I don't know about that one. And so they send out different pieces of propaganda to different groups of people. Ashton?
One thing they used was censorship, so they like burned a lot of books. They had lots of censorship in the media.
Yeah.
They also used boycotting techniques, like boycotting Jewish businesses.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So part of the propaganda that was spread out was to get other people to participate in this boycott then.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Jack.
I didn't exactly research the ministry, but something I did read, like researching the propaganda, is that like Hitler came to power, and then like one of the first things he did was create the ministry, just because like so much of his power is based on like how much propaganda there was about what he was doing. Like he set that up, and because of so much propaganda, like it was almost like it kind of created his like just turned him into the dictator.
Right.
Like everyone liked him.
Right. I mean, imagine somebody came into power tomorrow and they said, hey, everyone in America, we hate blonde people now. We hate blondes. Sorry to Haley and Keegan and Lydia and all you blonde people. Scott, kind of, I don't know. You can stay. Like, we just don't like them anymore. So everybody don't shop at their businesses, make them register. Within a week, we'll get them into camps. Like, we're just gonna get rid of the blonde people. It would be absurd, right? Like, everyone would just be like, what are you talking about? Of course we don't hate blonde. I mean, there are already existing prejudices about blonde people, right? I mean, we all know that they're dumber than brunettes. Just kidding. But there are prejudice. There is prejudice, and we're gonna capitalize on that prejudice. But within a week, we don't want blonde people in our society anymore. No one is going to listen to you, right? They might say like, okay, yeah, secretly I agree, blonde people are a little bit dumber than other people, but that doesn't mean that we can just like discriminate against them. That's silly. But Jack's talking about how the first thing that you do is set up this propaganda machine, right? Where you're pumping out all of this information. Maybe every movie you make has a dumb blonde character, and maybe they're not the center of the movie, but they're in there somewhere, right? And we don't let any movies with censorship. We burn all books where there are any blonde characters that do any good. And we censor all movies. We don't let any movies into production where blonde characters are the heroes. Are you guys feeling it's on a whole lot right now? And then slowly, over a number of years, people start getting it into their heads like, oh, I don't really like blonde people. And they might think that comes from them. They're like, well, all of the media I consume tells me the truth about blonde people. And so you slowly start to take away blonde people's rights, and you go along with it because you're like, yeah, everything has shown me that they're no good. So it makes perfectly logical sense, right? But part of that is because of the kind of slow incremental propaganda machine that he put into place. Did anybody research Goebbels? What did you find out about him?
So he is one interesting fact that I found is he actually died a day after Hitler. He became the dictator of like Germany, but then he died.
For one day?
Yeah, for one day. I think he died because he was so committed to Hitler.
Oh, did he killed himself?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
But
and his family? Okay.
He used like many like modern like propaganda techniques. Like Hitler's very impressed with that. He used like media, radio, all those modern things, and that's why he got so trusted with Hitler.
Okay, good. So it was because he had control of new technology, right? It wasn't like he was just doing books and pamphlets. He was using things that were brand new, like movies. Movies had only come out 30 years before this. Movies were new. Radio was brand new, and he was using those ways. So he was like technologically kind of advanced. Yeah, Kale.
I actually read two sources that were like kind of had different opinions on them. One of them was taking like a neutral stance, and I honestly felt sorry for him. And then the other called him like a cruel, evil person. One source I read, he actually didn't hate Jews. He's actually engaged to someone who's like half Jewish, and he had many Jewish teachers he respected.
Interesting.
And he actually joined the Nazi party by accident. He didn't mean to join them.
Oops, I'm a Nazi. How does that happen?
I think he got involved with them at like his college.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And like broadcasting, because he was into broadcasting.
Yeah. Okay. So from what I know about it, he was extremely ambitious, right? And it kind of didn't matter where his ambition took him as long as he became successful. Which, I mean, by all accounts, he set out he had a goal and he achieved it. Up until that date, he was pretty successful. Zach?
And he kept the ministry on a very short leash.
Mhm.
The journalist reporters there slipped up and did anything went against the ministry code, they could often be killed and sent to a concentration.
Right, and this was not, these are not people who were Jewish themselves or any of the other, we don't want to lose track, and we'll talk about this, but of all of the other people who were discriminated against and sent to camps too, but people of his own party who worked for him, if they acted out at all, they were done. Yeah, Ashton?
One thing I read with him is that he was actually trying to join World War I and fight for the Germans,
I
but
didn't know this.
he had some like foot, something with his problem with his feet, I think. And from there, he promised himself that he did something very great and ambitious. I think that's where his ambition came from, just like being denied to become a soldier.
Interesting. There are so many stories like this. I mean, you could even take Hitler being rejected as an artist. He was a painter and was not a very good painter, and so he was rejected by the art world. So many stories of people who are that ambitious kind of person having a moment of rejection that kind of propels them into becoming the evil people that they are, right? Through ambition, through blind ambition. It seems like I'm gonna do whatever I have to do to achieve my goals here. Okay, so I want to show you a couple instances of propaganda. Then, were you seeing, as you looked at the propaganda, were you seeing references to vermin and references to rats, especially? It's all over the place. Now that was it's not a stereotype. That was a like offensive, like racial slur type thing before Hitler came into power. That Jews have been discriminated against for hundreds and hundreds of years before that. They were a people that didn't have quite a place to call home. So they were spread across Europe, and in each country there were different levels of discrimination against Jewish people, right? So like sometimes we're like, oh, Germany, that's, they're kind of singular in how evil they were and how racist they were. But France discriminated against Jews, Poland discriminated against Jews, all the places that Hitler ended up coming in and taking over, they already had that discrimination kind of in place, and Hitler could capitalize on these feelings that people already had towards Jewish people. And one of the kind of ways that they would reinforce their discrimination was through this image of Jewish people as rats. So this caption, this was a political cartoon that appeared in a newspaper in Germany. It says, "When the vermin are dead, the German oak will again flourish." And he has like a machine that pumps poison into burrows. If you've ever read Watership Down, this is what Watership Down is about. So it's tragic. Anyway, so they have this gas that they're pumping into the burrows, and then you have rats fleeing and then some rats dead. And this was supposed to be representative of Jewish people and of the state, the strong state, getting rid of the vermin, right? What is ironic and very, very disturbing is that the thing that you use to gas out vermin like this was called Zyklon B, and that is eventually what they used in concentration camps to kill Jews in the showers. It was Zyklon B. So it was like, that connection became so strong that you could use the same means of murdering people as they did to rats. Let me show you this one. It has this effect of dehumanizing people, right? Here you've got this like weird human animal hybrid, but you've used like exaggerated facial features of a Jewish person, which like exaggerated long nose, right? And you put that on the face of a rat, and it makes it so that people feel a little bit more comfortable if they accept this idea of the rat as Jew, the Jew as rat, I should say. It makes people more comfortable with dehumanizing them and then exterminating them. And that word is really important, that word extermination, because that was a word that you couldn't use at the beginning of Hitler's power. You couldn't say, I want to exterminate a person, a group of people. But by the end of Hitler's power, you could say it just fine. And everyone kind of accepted that terminology, even though it's so dehumanizing. And this is an example of, another example of Jews as vermin. So what my question is here, and what we're going to keep thinking about, I don't necessarily need an answer today, but let's have a little discussion. Spiegelman in the book Maus chooses to represent his characters as vermin, right? Like they're represented as mice. Why would he choose to take on this idea that this image that Hitler and Goebbels and the propaganda ministry, like that they had all used to discriminate against Jewish people? So I'm going to pass out the books again, so you can just have it in front of you to look at. And actually, I'm going to have you talk to each other while I'm passing out the books. Talk to the person next to you about that idea. Why do you think he chose to represent Jews as mice in this book?
Like they can do like the book is taking years. Each one is an accurate representation like what architects saw. More like mice. This place is like
All right, what are you guys thinking? Why do you think that he would choose? I'm going to stand back here because I'm recording. Yeah, Keegan.
It kind of like is embracing the stereotype almost in like a spiteful way to like kind of get back at like the negative stereotype.
Okay, what does it mean to embrace a stereotype in a spiteful way? I love that language.
I don't know how to explain it. Like for me, like a lot of people do call me dumb because I am blonde. But I'm just like, I kind of started embracing it and just be like, oh yeah, I am a dumb blonde. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't know how to explain it, but you kind of just say it in a spiteful way.
Yeah, the
And then
spite
it
kind of,
backs down a little bit.
got it. So the spite comes through in the tone that you have, like, oh yeah, I'm a dumb blonde, right? But then it also comes through in the fact that you're not a dumb blonde at all, so that if they make that presumption about you, right, and you say something smart, it like kind of can cut down their own intelligence, right? Because if they assume you're dumb because you're a blonde, and they say that, and you're like, yeah, I am, and then you say something really smart, they're gonna be like, oh, maybe I'm the dumb one.
Yeah,
That's kind of the idea.
It's like, shoot, what was I gonna say? It's like, what was I gonna say? Okay, come back.
Okay, Maggie?
It kind of shows, like, adding on to that, it kind of shows, like, they're more than just what they seem. Like,
Mhm.
it shows how much character they have and how much, like emotion it can be.
Yeah.
Other than just, like, oh, they're mice, maybe, like, I don't have to worry about, like, oh, why are they, you
Yeah.
just, like, look down upon them. But then when you, like, look at it, like, in a different perspective, you're like, oh, wait, maybe they are just like us, they're just a little bit different.
Okay, good. So it's like it's pointing out that they are different, and it was their differences that caused them to be discriminated against, right? So you can't just say like, well, they're not, everyone's just a human in this book. Like no one, I mean, you could, but he doesn't want to just say, oh, there weren't any real differences between Jews and we'd say Gentiles, Jews and everybody else, right? There were no real differences there. He doesn't want to say that because it was the differences that got them killed. So he's pointing out the differences still, but then he's saying, but also they are human and they have emotions and they are individual characters. That's important. Yeah, Bridger?
I said because like when you like exterminate like rats and mouse, like they can't really do anything to stop it. Like that's the exact same way with the Jewish people. Because like they could speak up and be like, hey, we're not like murdered, we're not like bad or anything.
Yeah.
But like there's so much propaganda and so many people have already been tricked into thinking this that their voice basically like couldn't change anything.
Yes.
And they like couldn't really speak up.
Okay, good. So there's like a lack of agency in this book by them being represented as mice. Did you notice that the Polish people are represented as pigs in this? And that did you notice, I don't think you've seen one yet, the Nazis are represented as cats. So if the cat seems to have way more agency than the mouse does. Will you look on page 20 for a second? There's an image there of, what's her name? Lydia, right? Lucia. There's an image there of Lucia grabbing onto his leg and like looking upwards. This book very rarely shows their mouths, which I think goes right along with what Bridger was saying. They didn't seem to have a voice. But here, when she's super vulnerable and she's crying out, that's the only time we see her mouth. And when we see her mouth, we don't see her eyes anymore. So here she becomes just this like wail of pain, and that's all we see of her face until she goes back down, and then she becomes vulnerable and voiceless. So it's like this that's like the two modes that people can act, that the mice can act in. They can either have a voice, but it's all of pain and suffering, or they don't get a voice and they seem to be just passively going along with things. Yeah. Keegan, did you remember?
Yeah. It's like embracing your insecurities. Like if you know your insecurity and you know like what's wrong with you, then other people can't really like have that power to point it out.
Yeah.
Because you already know like what's wrong and you can find a way to like, I don't know, fix it, I guess.
Yeah, there's a kind of reappropriation here then, right? It's when somebody has used something so negatively against you for so long that you decide you can't use that anymore because I'm going to use it myself and I'm going to use it to be a good thing. I'm going to say that this is mine now. I own it. I own my blondness. So I get to kind of redefine what it means to be blonde. Ashton and then to Zach.
I think maybe why he did it was to show like what the book was actually like how the Nazis and like how they actually portrayed them as
Yeah.
like mice or mouse. So I think that's maybe why.
Yeah, so it gives it this kind of like, it situates it in a certain time period where it's like this is the 1930s and this is what Jewish people were seen as. So it keeps reinforcing this idea that these people, they're acting their everyday lives. They're dating, they're owning factories, whatever, but they're seen as mice the whole time. Zach?
They're drawn like as mice. They also like they don't act like mice.
Yes.
And it shows like people label them mice. They call them mice and rodents. But reading the book, they're clearly not just rodents. And
Yeah.
so it's just like a mislabeling that they're not these like feral creatures. It's like you call them mice, but they just live normal everyday lives,
Yeah.
just like you. Which means they are more than just mice.
Right, and you very quickly as you're reading this book almost forget that they're drawn as mice. You just start reading them as human beings, right? So it's also like getting all the details and the nuances of their characters helps us not see just the stereotypes. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna keep thinking about this as, the book is actually gonna talk about it a little bit. He's gonna think about why his dad seems to be such a Jewish stereotype in his own writing. So we'll talk about this again a little bit later. But what I wanna do then is think about this did not just occur in Germany. Propaganda has been a way that people communicate, the governments communicate with their people for, since there have been governments. Since you've been able to use symbols to manipulate people, there has been propaganda. And it wasn't just Germany that was doing propaganda. America during World War II was also creating quite a lot of propaganda. America had a lot of needs too at the time. They needed to get people fully on board with the war effort, right? There were a lot of sacrifices that people had to make in America in order for America to get involved in World War II. And there was a long time where America held out on getting involved. It wasn't until after the fight came to us that America decided, okay, yeah, we should probably go get involved in that war now that it's a danger to us, right? And so they had to, Disney pushed out a lot of propaganda. We're gonna watch Donald Duck here. There were there were newsreels that played before every movie. Hollywood was producing tons of propaganda to try and get people to join the war effort, to fundraise, to buy war bonds, like everything that they could do to help support the government. So we're gonna watch Donald. It's a 9-minute movie, so we're gonna watch the whole thing. So you can see what propaganda looked like in America at the same time. I'm gonna stop share.